All right, we got a great treat now. A good friend of mine for many years, his name is Wayne Williams, is here, and he's going to be talking to you. He's also a fellow of the Institute. Wayne has done some really great things. He is the CEO of Telect, which is a connectivity company headquartered in Spokane, Washington. He's been on the helm of this company for 35 years. He's been active in all sorts of boards and ministries and churches and this sort of thing. He's a graduate of Harvard Business School. And one thing about Wayne, and this might be part of the story, is that there was a time when, and his public information, where the company was valued at about $1.2 billion, and then things happened beyond his control. But he's kind of been there, and he sees what happens when you succeed. So any words you can hear from Wayne are going to be really good, for especially those of you who want to build something. So, my friend Wayne Williams.
Appreciate you. Okay, why doesn't everybody stand up for a second? I drew the card of after dinner like John did. So, okay, take 5 breaths slowly so you don't hyperventilate. Are you feeling better now? See? Once you're done with 5, you can sit back down. Or you can stand up the whole time I'm going to be here. I would do jumping jacks or other stuff, but I figured since some of you snuck out to have some cookies, and oh man, I was getting depressed today. I will just be honest with you, because it seems like, and the depression for me, and it wasn't clinical depression, John will tell me that later, but it was really just about how we are, everything today I felt like was stitching together, and I'm standing up here in front of you that I'm still a product, and I'm still being worked on, and no matter what I'm trying to do inside of my life and my business, it's been challenging. And so hearing the thing on health, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's an important part of my story, so I'm going to share that shortly. And I'm hopeful that I want to challenge you a little bit more on risk. Today we heard a lot about safety, and we heard a lot about what's going on in the world, and I've learned the most the last 16 to 17 years after the dot-com bust in my life, and I'm going to share a little bit of that. But I'd really like you, each of you that are in the Institute now, whether it's counseling or leadership, if you're in part of it, you've already started the program, you've been in business, you've been in an area, you're about ready to launch into a new world. And that world sometimes that you want to do is going to always about safety. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit of the stories where I have made, most of them are scars. I had one of a board member of mine, he told me, Wayne, he said, you've got to turn scars into stars. And I thought that was so powerful. How many of you have physical scars? Raise your hand. Do you remember where you were at when you had the scar? Who the people you were at? Well, my life really, I remembered the same thing. I've got a scar on my finger because of doing a roof with my neighbor when I was 12 years old. I've got a cut across my knee from running into a barbed wire fence when I was 16. We remember those. I've got other scars. But I didn't realize how many internal scars that I had. And until a lot has been discovered for me over the last 5 years. And so the theme that I'm taking you through a little bit is this idea that you take care of yourself, you take care of your business. And that your business is your family, it's your marriages, it is your business, it's your enterprise. And with that, I believe that if you don't do that, and I didn't do that for a while, then all of that is in jeopardy. And so it's this kind of this concept that we have to really work on. And for me, it's in and around Matthew 22. And I was raised in the church. I was brought up in what I would call really a law and legalistic environment. And I didn't really understand what grace and mercy was until about 1997. But with that, I'm sharing that background with you because I misunderstood this scripture. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I started to understand it. And I'm just going to go down when asked about the greatest commandment, but it says the second is equally important, love your neighbor as yourself. And so my wife and I are very focused on service. We've served others for a long time, and I have actually found that just serving others and pouring out myself to others has had a detriment to my health. It's had a detriment to my life. It's had a detriment in some cases to my family. And so I've had these, and the last 5 years for me has been huge on growth. There we go. Anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit, I'm sorry about this, a little bit off the technology here, is this positive and negative realities of the DNA. So the focus for me was really on being raised in a home that was perfection is not an unreasonable goal. My family I'm in 5th generation entrepreneur, and it goes way back up into the Northwest. I was born in Anchorage, Alaska. My dad was a state trooper, my mom a banker. And when they got married, I was there during the earthquake in the early 60s and when Kennedy was assassinated, and then we moved out of that area. But a lot of my family came in and around that area. And the DNA is important because we heard that even discussed today on just really the legacy of our fathers and what's being passed down. But we do have an opportunity to change that. And my passion has been in innovation and creativity and that. But on and about 2001, that kind of changed. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Do you know the definition of an entrepreneur? Anybody know the definition? Entrepreneur is somebody that jumps off the cliff and builds the plane on the way down. Okay, that's really been the story of my wife and my life. We met early on. We got married at 19 and 20. Today we just celebrated our 33rd year anniversary. We have 3 kids that are miracle kids. And then about 4 years ago, all 3 of the kids got married in 12 months. And 2 years ago, they all ended up having grandkids, starting having grandkids. So we have 3 of them today. So in the Williams household, we like to do things fast. But what I have found out that the things that sometimes that we do fast aren't good for us. We like a microwave oven, or if you understand wine and good wine takes a long time to make good. It's really good that way, but we like to do things fast. And so I've had to learn to do things a little bit of the slow way in the last few years. I started in business selling praying mantises at 5 years old. I raised a cow named Lucky and sold to my 5th grade teacher, which was he was not so lucky. Lucky wasn't. And then I started a fly fishing shop when I was 12. And I taught myself a lot of what I guess I knew about interacting with people at a young age by building and tying flies and tying commercially and that. And the last thing I really wanted to do was work in this telecom business. We sell to the top tier telecom companies today. And inside that's the AT&Ts, the T-Mobiles, the Sprints, the Verizons, as well as the large data center companies. And the impact of that, it's huge. My kids, this positive and negative reality, what they've watched some of the stuff that I brought into the household, and when I went through a downturn in the business, they watched me handle it incorrectly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the story coming up, because the perfection is not an unreasonable goal. You need to understand that for me, that was really hard. I had to learn hard lessons because I could never achieve what was set out in front of me. And so the interesting part is when I started in business for the first 17 years, everything that I did was working. The business grew. We grew from 3 employees when I started with my parents to 2,400 employees in the year 2000. And I was on the road show, as John mentioned, 13 days away from going public. And I was asking the Lord, can you give me a sign, a door open or close on whether we should proceed with this? And 13 days before the road, before we were going to price, I felt at peace when God said, pull off the road show and don't go. And I didn't know why until about a month later, and I saw the market collapsing, because all of our customers were Enron, WorldCom, Global Crossing, 360 Networks, Quest, every single one of them, they were at the top of our book. And realized I had no problems. Well, there was problems, plenty of problems in growing up, even with my family, and that through those times of growth. But everything that I touched seemed to turn to gold. Every product that we developed, every time we started a new facility, whether it was in Asia or Brazil. And in a short moment, we went from 2,400 employees worldwide in 2000 to 500 employees 2 years later, and we went from $270 million to $60 million in 24 months. And that really started a journey for me that I was a people person and focused on people. My kids saw it, but it started a journey for me because I could eat conflict for breakfast at work, and I could deal with that. But at the house, I became vacant because I knew that what I had inside of me. I knew the anger that would build up inside of me. And so all those things I learned, the DNA of our past, there were some good things I learned technically in my competency and the areas of drive. But inside my heart and my soul, I kept forgetting, Wayne, you got to serve others, but you're not taking care of yourself. And so We've got a family. I mentioned our family a little bit. In 1987, I read on the back of a bottle top, "Children are natural mimics. No matter what we tell them to do or not to do, they continue to do what we do." And that's exactly in business the same way. I was taught that you got to be there early in the morning and be there late at night. But those were performance-driven metrics. It really wasn't about how I care. I cared compassionately for people, but what I didn't understand deep down inside of me is that I needed to demonstrate them something else, even raised inside of what they knowingly knew were Christian owners and leaders. There was something that was missing during this time, and it was really because I was dealing with this sense of huge loss that I really hadn't grieved. I found myself over a period of time becoming what I would say the CEO of almost. I almost went public and almost went bankrupt and almost took in private equity and then almost sold the business twice during that time just to get it, to shed it and get it away. And so my past has influenced me at that point that I reacted a little bit differently, and I didn't even know what that reaction was going to look like. So I share that on the DNA because I want to tell you that it's really what I've learned in the last 5 years is it's what's inside that matters. And so that you don't know, do you guys know what a TLA is? It's a 3-letter acronym. Okay, I just wanted to share that with you. My industry is full of acronyms. I've got a couple of acronyms up here. You've heard TLP all day today. It stands for the Townsend Leadership Program. I think it's even spelled out over here. And so I'm going to talk with you in a second just quickly about what TLP it changed on inside, but I'm going to share with you just a little bit of a story on HSA, I got to even say it right, HASPC, which is the Heart and Stroke Prevention Clinic in Spokane, Washington. 5 years ago, my wife and I walked in to this place. We drew about 9 vials of blood, sent it in. We met with the doc for 4 hours. And I was healthy on the outside, and I felt good, and I passed. I was preferred for life insurance, all of those things. I walked in. We sat down. My wife had vascular issues in her DNA and her history, and I had arthrosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries and plaque buildup. So we walk in, and Dr. Amy Doneen sits down, and she says, "Okay, we're going to start with you, Wayne. Here's your chart, and here's everything else. And we want to let you know at 48 years old that by the time you're 58, you have an 83% chance of having heart, stroke, renal failure, or diabetes. And here's why." And she goes, "If you continue on the same path that you're doing, and you don't, as we've heard today, take the supplements, if you don't start changing your lifestyle." I mean, John, look, when he talked about, the muscle failure up there, and he showed that picture, that was actually what I'm going to look like with that picture you guys saw up there earlier. But I had to start a regimen. I had to start changing things because I did find out it's what's inside. And a lot of times we watch 40-year-old or 29-year-old women, men, triathletes die that quickly because on the outside they look really good. And what we don't know is really what's on the inside. Interestingly enough, I met John around this time. We're just starting it. And then I hear about this coaching program and leadership program, and I decide, okay, I'm going to go to this program. And I come down to Newport Beach, and there's a few people here that were there during this time, and some of you that had Jill in process this week. I was right there, so Jill was there, and so she was a veteran, and she'd been there before. And I walk in, and I can get into the didactics. Don't you like the didactics? You guys like the didactics? I love that because it's like leadership growth and everything else. So we move from his kitchen, and then we go into his living room. And I sit about as close to the door as I can because I'm not sure what it looks like when 5 boxes of Kleenex drop in the center of a living room. And so it was at that point in time that I watched this process, and what you guys have gone through, I think 9 times this week. I watched this process start to unfold, and I'm feeling some things inside. I'm a feeler, I'm compassionate, but I didn't realize the gap of feeling that I didn't have. I actually shared with my wife a number of years later. She ended up going through a whole year with Dennis DeValier. You guys probably met him too, and we've done a lot of work with John and Dennis. But I ended up telling her that you got to if you're going to do a life walk at the beginning, you should do it at the beginning of a leadership program, and then you should do it when you end. And she's like, "Well, why? Why would you do that?" I said, "Because I didn't even know what a feeling was at the beginning of starting this." And so it really is about what's inside that matters, and those are the things that I looked at. So today what's happened is I'm really coming up on 10,000 hours of my heart and stroke prevention and my leadership group. And the 10,000 hours that we've heard about, really with Malcolm Gladwell is so important to us because wherever you're at in your journey, if it's 200 hours or it's 250 or it's 2,500, I would just tell you, you stay the course. You stay it as long as you can. And so for me, I put that screen up, that image up there is actually an image of a brain. And I share that with you because I had epilepsy when I was 3 and I outgrew it when I was 12. And I've wanted to fly my whole life. And I have just got another application going into the FAA so I can fly. So if you ask, I might find out I can't fly still because I haven't had a seizure for 40 years, but the FAA doesn't recognize that. And my wife said that's because my brain does look different than everybody else's, so bear with me on that one. But the reality is how long? You stay with it as long as you're alive on growth. You have to stay with it, and you've got to begin to head out there. So I want to hear, Brene Brown, she said, so my wife was going back through Daring Greatly, and in the book, she really talks about this idea of comparison. And comparison is a joy thief. And I found that was damaging to me in my performance times. It was the time like, if I'm at 100 million and so-and-so's at 150, well, why not there? If I've got 500 employees and not 600, why not there? And what I failed to realize is if I start comparing on the outside, instead of working on what is me and admitting and dealing with what's on the inside, I'm really destroying what God's had in mind and in store for me. And so I love speed, and I love my Viking heritage. The reason, I got to go to the next slide, sorry. I keep forgetting to not turn it. You saw that sword at the beginning. I've got Norwegian and German heritage in me, and I love Damascus steel. And I want you to think about, if you look at this blade up here, every one of the parts of Damascus steel, some of them are 1,000 layers, and they're heated up, and then they're hammered over into each other, and then they're cooled back down. And so think about that as your life. And I don't know where I'm at on this journey right now, but if you can look at a Damascus steel blade, none of them are the same. None of them are the same. Every one of them is different. And the black in there is from the carbon that's in there, that's put in there. And I look at that as our life. And your life is, you want to be unique. You don't want to be the same. We are commodities if we're the same. So each one of us have these strengths. And so utilize those strengths. And each one of those, I've actually started writing down in each one of those layers: epilepsy, lay off 1,700, get a patent, grow business 26%. To have positive EBITDA, because every one of those, I got tough stuff in there that was the heating that God allowed me to go through, and then the cooling of a time of rest. And so it's one of those things. Look at using this as being redemptive as we walk through. And I'm going to kind of speed through this just to keep us on time. So I did mention that your needs matter at the beginning of this, and what the point of that verse, I wanted to say, it is really He before me, but it's me before others. And it's not just about being selfish in this case, because sometimes people will look at that verse and go, well, you're being selfish. John challenged me, don't think about being servant leadership, think about leader servantship. I will always be in service. You will probably always be in service there. But I have failed my business before. I've failed my family before because I retreated to a place of servant and not leading with the areas of gifts and strengths that I've had that made me uniquely qualified for what I'm doing. I'm an activator in Strength Finders, belief, responsible, and a futurist and self-assured, and so the needs matter. So if you look at this, just think God's at the center for me. In order for me to reflect the best amount of light for Him, I've got to be close to Him, and then my family and my life team are important, and I have been abandoned by many of the types of people that John had just shared about, the chronics, the others that I overly invested in at the expense of my family and at the expense of myself and at the expense of my life team. So really try to look towards that. That's where I want to go. General Eric Krzyzewski said, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And it's just so powerful. And a lot of us do not like this. Right now in this area, WTF is just triggering you guys. A lot of you. You might even be uncomfortable over it. Well, in Wayne's world, this really means willing to fail. It doesn't mean the other, okay? So in the course of this, it's really being able to fail. Michael Jordan, this is NCAA basketball season. The Zags just missed having a 30. They're from Spokane, so we love the Zags. They just missed having a 30 game. They lost, and they came back strong the other night in a way. But it's the shots that you're not taking. You don't even have a chance to miss or make. And so I would challenge you in this area of risk is Take some steps to experiment. I believe in dealing with millennials today because I was a millennial type once at 26 years old, and I deal with this with others, and even people. If you are a control freak and I have control in my nature, it's time to start letting go. It's time to start differentiating in your life what's material and what's immaterial. It's time to turn over things to people and give up to them some areas of control. It is so hard to do, but why is it when you get old you say, oh, well, you're not ready? Why is it when parents, we've created this environment, we heard today, it's all about safety. The problem is today is over 80% of employees today do not want to work for an entrepreneurial company because it's not safe, it's risky. And I got a whole other thing to talk about on that, but I won't. Is that what's happening is they're wanting to go to what's safe. And what we need to do is you want to be able to experiment. I'm a believer, give up control, let people burn their fingers, just don't torch the house. Because I am callous today. I look like that inside the Damascus Steels because I tried things that I wasn't ready to do. Every time someone's asked to start a new job, they've never done it before. And so why do we expect them to be ready the day they start the job? We've got to be helping them. And so when you bring people into your environment, really try to realize this willing to fail. So the next slide here, my grandfather was a glass blower. And I talked about burn your fingers, and I use that because he did neon signs, but you could reach up and shake his hands, and it like had grit and callus on it. And we're always told, don't touch the stovetop. Man, I want my grandkids to touch a stovetop. Just don't keep it on there for 5 minutes or 5 seconds. But I want them to know it's hot. I don't want to keep telling them it's hot, and then one day they wake up and they hang on to it. And that's what we want to do with the people around us. So the thing I decided to add, John, this is not willing to fail, it's willing to feel. I figured, I wanted to start thinking about this a little bit different because a feel is what you get when you're failing. You're feeling that, and you got to be able to express it. And Dennis, on one of my coaching calls, told me, I thought it was so powerful, Wayne, from the feelings area, feelings are more efficient. They're like the lubricant, and I have found that even in dealing with process group type stuff in our company. So finally, John has the growth model. You saw that, and I'm going to close with this, and then I'll go to my final just like short video clip. And I think it's interesting. In the Northwest, we have pine trees, and they have a tap root. And the reason they have a tap root, it runs all the way down. And actually, it's what makes them strong. Runs down till they can find water. And we talk about oaks. And John's talked about life teams. And for me, I've got these life teams. I've got people that were sending me texts tonight, praying for you right now as you're speaking. The people that are on my team that know where it's at, and people that are in my Townsend Leadership Program group. And Chris and Tiffany are here. It's great to see you guys. And just really close people and friends that are around me. And what I love about it, the General Sherman tree in Northern California is like 2,500 years old. And people wonder, how do these sequoias that are so tall, they're taller than their root structure in underground. And this is an image from the root structure, and it's because they're completely interconnected at the root. And so what makes them strong in there, that's your life team that John was sharing about earlier, is you don't want a diseased life tree next to you. You don't want to have those areas. You've got to find the people that are connecting that through the storms. And I had those. I had my family, I will tell you. I had some other people through some of the toughest storms that are there. And so I would just challenge you, when you're staying connected, just keep connection. If you feel like you're like me, you can resort to isolation. That's the time you better be picking up the phone, calling someone, or meeting with them. And so finally, I'll just want you to watch the video before we turn to Q&A. I'd like you to look at this whole talk that I've kind of had as just an opportunity for you to take some risks, redeem your story, and get out there. In 2012, I took a Harley ride around the United States, hit 32 cities, 900 customers, and visited with them in 49 days, nearly 11,000 miles. And I like to ride motorcycles. Part of the reason that I do that is you don't have an airbag and you don't have ABS. Well, you do have ABS brakes today. But you're out there. You get to smell everything. You get to see it. When you rode past a dead deer 3 weeks ago, as much as you do smelling lilies, or up into New York when I went in there, and you can see not as many grape vineyards as we have down here right now, but you begin to see stuff and get out there. And so I just challenge you as you're getting out there is take some risk. I ask myself today, if I'm going to make a decision to do something, what would I do 10 years ago? Because if I had the wisdom I've got today And I don't want to become so risk adverse going ahead. I want to ask myself what I would do if I was 20% younger or 10 years ago. So with that, we'll do the video clip and then bring John up. You ready?